in the New Testament, there's a lot of partying going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wine. That is a whole thorny story in and of itself.
They're all horny. They're all, and I didn't say horny, thorny. The men were horny.
Happy New Year, Christine.
Happy New Year, Alycia. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
So excited to be back with you all. Welcome to Religious Rejects. I'm Alycia, she, her.
I'm Christine.
Today, our topic is dun, 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 the biblical understanding of marriage.
Yes, which we've been hearing a lot of in current events. There seems to be a movement to move us back to biblical marriage. And I just feel like we need to make sure we all understand what we want to move back to.
So I think what we want to do too is make sure we understand what biblical marriage is versus what the rhetoric about so-called biblical marriage is, because there is a difference between what's actually in the Bible about marriage and then what the conservative evangelical rhetoric about what biblical marriage is, right?
Right.
So let's get into it. This is another one of those ones, Christine, where I've been like dying to talk to you about it. And I was like, I can't talk to you about it until the episode.
Okay.
So I was so curious because you and Lion, you were pretty young when you got married, right?
24.
Oh, 24. Okay, yeah.
Not too bad. I mean, I would consider that young now.
Yeah. Not too bad then.
But yeah,
Even that.
I was actually, they were worried about me, to be fair. My youth group and other youth pastors were a little worried because I was starting to get to the spinster age.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I know.
So there was a pressure
There was,
to
yes.
get married.
Yes.
And 24 was already considered kind of old.
They were getting nervous around
In those
23
circles.
when I had no prospects.
Oh.
So yeah, thank God my husband came when he did. And
Yeah. So did you get married before Bible college, before you went to Bible college, or how did that, I mean, I guess you must have.
Well, he went to Bible college first, right out of high school.
Got it.
And then he took a couple years off, internships kind of things.
Got it.
And I met him on one of the internships, but then he had to go back to Bible college to finish.
I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when you all got married.
Yes.
Because you had to be married, no cohabitating or anything like that. No.
Yeah, no, we had to
Not
be
allowed.
married.
You guys have been married how long?
Since 1994.
Yeah.
32?
Yeah. That's
30,
amazing.
it will be 32. Yeah.
Yay! Congratulations. That's awesome. So I'm so curious about the vows that you guys exchanged.
Oh, boy.
Was that a thing? And did you have to say that you were going to submit to your husband or any of that kind of language?
I'm going to say that I probably did.
Okay.
I don't remember specifics on the vows. What I do remember, which is hilarious now, especially today, as I have read over in preparation for this, that we also use the Ruth line, your people will be my people.
Oh.
Yeah. And I see
Your
that,
God, my God,
Yep,
where you go, I will go.
Yeah, as if I was somehow a foreigner to the evangelical system, which I was not. But it's so funny, like the innocence and that's such a sweet thing. And now, and I hope we get to talk about this later, the possible implications of what was really going on there, which again, we need to have a whole episode just on Ruth.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's a lot more there that people really understand.
There's so much. It's such a
Yes.
rich book. It's so beautiful and complicated, and there's so much to it that we don't learn in regular church life.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
get that. Okay.
Anyway, so I thought that was funny.
I just was curious because, I went to a wedding not too long ago. They had the language where the wife had to submit to the husband, but the husband did not have the same language of having to submit also to his wife. It wasn't it was very one-sided.
We were not one-sided. There was no one-sided.
Okay.
I do remember that. I said,
Okay.
I ain't submitting unless you're submitting.
Yeah.
So
That's the Christine I know. That's the Christine we love. Yes, absolutely.
No. I wasn't. and I'm sure he knew. He's like, yeah, I get that.
He's like, yep, that tracks. Yeah, so you got married in 94. I'm a lesbian, I'm queer, and I was married, not legally, but my wife and I got married in 2006. That was a commitment we felt we wanted to make in with the kids and everything like that. And so we had a ceremony. We weren't legally married until 2014. We had to drive up to Illinois from Texas, and we got legally married
I'm sorry, why did you have to do that?
because gay marriage was not legal yet.
Thank you.
It
Thank
was
you.
before the national, it was
Okay.
before the Supreme Court decision.
Oh.
And so
okay.
we were on a trip up to Illinois to go see our middle son. He was doing a summer stock theater in Illinois. So we decided, well, let's just get married up there.
Yeah.
So we did get legally married. And so we had a couple ceremonies, which kind of tracks with the way a lot of gay couples, they ended up having multiple ceremonies. Like some went to Canada to get married when it was legalized there. Some went to Massachusetts, some went to California. So as it was kind of happening in different places, they would get married in different places. So sometimes they have multiple wedding dates that they're celebrating and all that kind of stuff. But so we had our kind of what we call our church wedding in 2006, the official, what we considered our official, and then our legal wedding in 2014. That was just at a courthouse. And I was not sure that the judge who was marrying us was going to make it through the ceremony. I think it was kind of, his face was so red. I was really concerned he was going to have a heart attack or something. He seemed so uncomfortable
Oh my God.
having to marry us. That was my take on it. So anyway, but he did it and we were legally married. So anyway, yeah, so we have a lot to talk about today.
Yes.
So many things. So we're going to kind of start with what is the biblical understanding of marriage. And we started, this was so much fun to research, right?
Oh, I know.
Oh my gosh, there was so much. So we're going to start with, what is the understanding of marriage in the Hebrew Bible?
I actually read a great book by Jennifer Grace Bird, PhD, called Marriage in the Bible. And of course, I think for most people, maybe not. I guess we shouldn't say that. I guess we shouldn't assume anybody knows anything about marriage in the Hebrew Bible. But the bottom line is, marriage in the Hebrew Bible was more about property. It was more about continuing your line of succession. For those of you that watch Succession, making sure that this was your child and your name. And I think
not just your child, your son.
Fair.
Because it was really,
You're right.
Everything went through the male line, and especially the oldest son was particularly important. But yes, making sure that you knew that the son was yours.
Yes. And the also the idea that you really kind of come away with as you sit and read the way God supposedly talks about marriage. You know, he says to be fruitful and multiply. And the reasoning for that, most scholars believe, is because Israel at the time was such a small, or the Hebrews at the time were such a small group, and they were trying to continue to grow and become this great nation. And so therefore, I used to always wonder, I'm like, why couldn't they intermarry? Because to be, with other races, because that came up in the 60s. Many Christians kind of came out and says, oh, black and white people shouldn't marry because you're not supposed to mix races. And
it wasn't just in the 60s. It went along before that. But it became a huge issue in the 60s.
I mean, it was big enough that I was even questioned a little bit by the time I got married in the 90s, because I was marrying a Hispanic man. And I had to say, this is okay, right? Because, the Bible continues to say that and people continue to perpetuate it. But now
the Bible continues to say what?
That you should not marry outside of your race for the Hebrew people.
Oh.
When to come find out, the reasoning for that may have been because they were trying to grow the Hebrew tribe. Yet,
let's be clear, though, that it's not race. the word for it
Yeah.
is not race in the Hebrew Bible.
Right.
It's the Israelite people, the
Mhm.
people of Israel, things like that. So it wasn't necessarily, so it's not the modern concept we have
Fair.
of what
Yes.
race is.
Mhm.
It was more tribe,
Tribe. Yes.
I mean, everything was kind of wound up into one, but it was like they talked about not marrying foreigners.
Yes.
That was the language that they used,
Mhm.
foreigners. And what's happened is in the context of the United States, with the history of enslavement and everything, and the construction of race in our country, that our modern ideas of race got read back into
Yes.
those ideas of don't marry a foreigner. So let's be clear, it's not
Yes.
saying race in the Hebrew Bible, it's foreigner, which I think is a really important thing for people to know.
Yes, but also for the same motivation, to
Right.
keep it pure.
Yeah,
Pure.
absolutely.
So
there's this
The
idea.
white man needs to stay pure. The Hebrews needed to stay pure. And it's
Correct,
the
yes.
same kind of mindset.
Although, however, if we go back to the book of Ruth,
Yeah.
we love the book of Ruth.
Yes. Well, and so
Ruth
many
was a foreigner.
there were a lot of foreigners.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll get to that,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So yeah, really important point.
Right. So the biggest thing is, and what I love that Dr. Bird does, is she makes sure that you understand that marriage is not about like what we think today of marriage, two people falling in love, consenting, and deciding to commit their lives to each other. But Jennifer Bird takes it to the point where the verb is to take. Which, oh, by the way, we still use that word in wedding ceremonies. Do you take this man? Do you take this woman? Because there is no word for marriage in the Hebrew Bible.
Right.
The verb is to take. So,
which is the man taking the
Yeah.
woman, not.
There is no husband taking a wife. That's
No.
another thing that kind of
Yeah.
gets put in there, that when you read, every time you read that a man is taking a wife, it actually reads a man taking a woman.
Yeah.
So, and yes, the graphic, the whatever you think of when you hear this man has taken a woman, yes, that's what it was.
Yes.
It was a very hostile, you don't get a choice. I am taking you, and I'm taking you and having sex with you, and now you are my wife.
Exactly. That was what was so interesting. When I was really digging into it, what constituted, officially getting married, in what we would today call getting married, is that there were two steps to it. First, that the woman leaves her house and goes to her husband's family house. Now, there's a little bit of things with this, but that's the way it's supposed to be, where the woman leaves her home, her household, her father's household, and has to move to her husband's family. That's step one. The second step is consummating the marriage. That is what a marriage is. Now, there's all kinds of things that go with this, because the woman's consent was not part of it.
Nope.
It was all about the father making arrangements and all of that. Now, there are a few cases there's some stories where other situations happen. There's one case where Hagar finds a husband for husband. Hagar finds a wife for Ishmael. So there's few exceptions, but they just point out how it's the exception to what normally would happen, which was the father finding a husband for a daughter.
Well, to be fair to your point, and Hagar, she is not of the Israel tribe.
She's not. You're right.
So
You're
she
right.
has different cultural ideas, possibly.
Yep.
About how it should be done.
Mm-hmm. And she was kicked out then, that is a whole thorny
Oh my goodness.
story in and of
They're all
itself.
horny. They're all, and I didn't say horny, thorny. The men were horny.
There were also the other thing that was really wild to me. We've talked about this many times on this podcast. There is a lot of concern about the so-called purity or virginity of a woman. And this goes back to making sure that if she has a child, they're making sure that they know who the father is and that, it's clear that it's the child of her husband or whatever. Now, there are there's stories of marriage by abduction and kidnapping in the Hebrew Bible, where the Israelites or the people of Israel, they would go and they would, capture people, and then they would steal the women and make them their wives, which is horrifying. Yep. Then there's cases of if a man takes a virgin, which is rape, let's just talk about that.
Yes.
She has to marry him.
Yes.
He is obligated to marry her, and then he's never allowed to divorce her because she has been, quote unquote, sullied, or she's not pure, so she's considered unmarriageable.
Right.
And so she's not going to be able to find another husband. So he is responsible for marrying her. He's never allowed to divorce her. I've always found that particularly horrifying as well, that a woman who is raped by a man would then have to be married to him the rest of her life.
Yeah.
I mean, how horrifying is that? That's awful.
Right.
Don't miss an episode. Hit subscribe now.
So we've covered the words take and woman. And I think, again, if people really go through the Hebrew Bible and you see how many times that women are, quote unquote, taken, and then you have Abraham and his wife, Sarah. Oh, boy. This poor woman. So Abraham takes a wife, Sarah. And for all intents and purposes, I think the idea is that they loved each other. However, there's a couple instances where Abraham has gone out with Sarah and they have gone into a land where they might be attacked or persecuted or whatever. And Abraham says, if anybody asks, "You're my sister." He says this to his wife.
Yes.
And then somebody asks.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, take her. He pimps out his wife. The next verse after Sarah has been taken is how wealthy Abraham becomes because of that. Then you see the guy come back and said, dude, this is your wife. What? Why? Why did you give her to me? Meaning he took her sexually.
Yeah.
And there's Sarah in the midst of it. Like, go ahead. But of course, she's barren, which is her other thing.
Yeah.
Let's not even, I don't even know if we want to go to the fact that these women are only valued for their baby making skills. And Sarah apparently has already been, maybe lesser in Abram's eyes because she's barren. Maybe that's why he felt he could just give her away to people. So she's very upset.
Yeah.
And this happens a couple times. This doesn't happen just once with Abraham and Sarah. He does this a couple times, and I think his grandchild does it as well with his wife, which, great lesson. Then, some point, the story continues, and I love how Dr. Bird points out, notice how all of these women are only talked about when it comes to their baby-making skills. The moment they've given the son, they are not heard from again, usually.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's so true.
Yeah.
So here's Sarah. She overhears this conversation between God and Abram. Okay. So right there, God apparently doesn't talk to women in most cases, especially over their own fertility. Yeah. So God's like, oh yeah, I'm going to give her, or the angel, I'm going to give her a son. And Sarah laughs. And then she gets in trouble for laughing.
Yeah.
And she's like, and you know what? I think of all the reasons why you would have laughed. Like, I'm going to have a child with this fool. That means I have to have sex with him. And I'm pretty damn pissed at him. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh. So
This is my husband who pimped me out and then we
Twice.
know of at least twice.
and now you want me to have, now I'm going to have his baby? For the love. But I'm sure Abraham takes his wife,
Mhm.
whether she likes it or not. And guess what? They have a son, finally. So now she is vindicated in the eyes of her peers. Now she is a woman. She's given the son. He's going to continue this line. Everything's honky-dory. Yay, yay, yay. Until Abraham decides, without probably talking to her, that he's going to take this son and sacrifice him.
Yeah.
So this woman has waited her whole life for a child. And now, well, let's just get rid of him. And what's really interesting, and there is a whole bunch of scholars now beginning to notice that not only does Sarah disappear from the narrative after that, when she is discussed, it's after she's passed.
Oh, yeah.
So did she leave him? Because when he goes to mourn her, he has to go to mourn her because she ain't with him. And I'm like, good for you, baby. Good for you. And you know what I mean?
I never noticed that.
Yeah. Scholars are
So
now saying, like,
interesting.
where'd she go? Why was he so far away when she died?
Yeah.
And why was her son using her tent to consummate his own marriages? Where was she? So it's all very like, oh, good for you, Sarah. Good for you.
Such good questions. Such good questions. Yeah, so when you dig into these stories, there's so many things. When you're looking at what is biblical marriage, I would challenge
Yeah.
most people today, both men and women. I think there's a lot of people who would really be uncomfortable
Yeah.
with what actual biblical marriage meant.
Yeah. And let's just, one more really quick
Yeah.
one. Please read this for yourself in all of its horror. But what really stands out to me is you have Jacob who falls in love with Rachel. And when we say they, and I'm not even sure they fell in love. I think it says he loved her. And I would like to address this whole actual romantic love a little bit later, because you do see some couples romantically in love, but they're not married. We'll go there later. But Jacob has to marry Rachel. He wants to marry Rachel. He ends up with Leah. Then he's got to work another 7 years to get Rachel. And all of a sudden you have these two women, these sisters. Genesis talks about how Leah was unloved, so God gave her babies. Rachel was loved, but she was barren. And I was like, can we just stop right there? What kind of God? And I don't believe that's true. I believe that's more that's how people understood it, which still is horrible. Even if you understood it, why would a God pit these two women against each other, these sisters?
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
I mean, what kind of life did these women have that they were pitted against each other like this? So then you have the great baby making competition and slaves are brought in and it's just the whole thing. And hundreds of, I mean, seriously, I don't even know how many children that these four women ended up having collectively, but there was a lot.
Yeah.
And it was fast and furious. And I don't know how Jacob did it, but he did, apparently. But that whole idea of we're just competing to have male babies and the women are pushed away or the girls are pushed away and these women have to keep doing this and some are loved and some aren't. And then the slaves have to, I mean, and again, it's all really just pimping each other out and trafficking. It's literally, especially when it came to the slaves, it literally was slave trafficking. Here, have my slave.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
just a lot. It's
a lot. It's terrible. And this is the biblical understanding of marriage. And I'm saying that with air quotes.
Yes.
Because this is what marriage meant in the Bible.
Yes.
And I don't think that is what people would honestly, most people would choose today. I know that there are some people who might, but I would say most people would not choose that kind of marriage.
Agreed. I wouldn't.
It's not even legal.
Right.
These things are not legal anymore in our country to do these kinds of things. The things that are considered marriage in the Hebrew Bible, they would be considered illegal now.
But here's the thing, and this is why, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic and fear-mongering, but at the same time, there are a lot of things happening right now in this country that I did not think that were legal that are still happening.
That's true.
Which is why when a group of people who actually have the power right now say they want to go back to biblical marriage, my question is, where do they draw the line?
Yeah, it's true.
So now we have this idea that marriage is pretty much just about sex and having sex and making babies. But there are some interesting... Go ahead.
For men.
For men, yes.
So, because women and men, so let's also name it. You've already referred to it, but Jacob had 2 wives.
Mm-hmm.
There's many stories in the Hebrew Bible talking about having multiple wives.
Yes.
Which is polygyny, not gummy.
Yes. Thank you.
Gyny, polygyny, which means that the men were allowed to have multiple wives. However, women were not.
Right.
That was not allowed for women. And so that is a biblical understanding of marriage, is to have one man and multiple wives.
And hundreds of wives, yes.
Yeah, in the case of King
Solomon.
Solomon, hundreds of wives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if you look closer beneath the surface, and this is where it kind of gets fun, if you will, or spicy, is that you have instances where people talk about their devotion to a person. It does sound as if marriage was on one side, but romantic love was on another, and they didn't necessarily equate into a commitment.
Yeah.
So you have Jonathan and David,
Oh.
these 2 men that apparently love each other and are devoted to each other. And the words that David uses about Jonathan and vice versa is something completely different than what is used when, say, Sarah and Abraham, when there's any talk of them. I mean, they'll say like, oh, Jacob loved Rachel, but the passion didn't seem to be there. There was nothing. Now, granted, it was a woman, so maybe nobody cared, but it's just really interesting to see the difference between Jonathan, David, the couples in Song of Solomon, which we've read a great deal.
Yes.
And we also know there are, people that say a lot of those couples were not married.
Right. Yeah.
So there did seem to be an allowance for people to have romantic attachments and relationships outside of marriage that were more consensual.
Yeah.
I will also say some people are wondering why Ruth clung to Naomi.
Yeah.
The verb clung is actually the same one that they tell us, that is used when we say man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his woman.
Yeah.
It's the same word.
And the words of devotion, the words of quote unquote, the commitment words that Ruth says to Naomi, your people will be my people, your God, my God. Where you go, I will go. And there you are, there where you die, there I will be buried as well. You use those in your own wedding ceremony?
I did.
I mean, it's used in heterosexual wedding ceremonies a lot. And it's a woman saying it to another woman, which is like most of the time, I mean, in my situation, it made sense because we were 2 women marrying each other. But there's a lot, I mean, it kind of is unacknowledged that it's 2 women saying it. It's a woman saying it to another woman in the book of Ruth.
Right.
And it's used for heterosexual marriage ceremonies.
I know.
Today.
I am completely guilty of that. That's why I said I had to have that one in there. And I think it's so funny now that I was like, yes, I love that. Oh my gosh.
Well, and it is. it's beautiful and it's moving and it's this deeply it's just so powerful, this statement that Ruth makes to Naomi there. And so I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong. I think the point that needs to be acknowledged is that it's two women involved, not a heterosexual situation at all.
That it's two women involved, the gravity of the words that Ruth is saying, and then what happens next, which we have alluded to and people got very upset at, is that Naomi now has to seemingly devise a way to keep Ruth in her orbit.
Yes.
So she sets up this whole thing. You need to go to this field. You need to get this guy's attention.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go uncover his feet, which we now possibly realize that it may not have been feet, and actually kind of feeds right into this because right after that it says he took her for his wife. And, I guess in my naive mind, I just thought, oh, then they planned a wedding. No, he freaking took her after she uncovers his feet. He feels so foolish. But yeah, and then she has a child. She has the boy, and she gives the boy to Naomi to nurse and to relish. And it's like, what happened there? Like, I mean, so yes, Ruth is going to be the husband or the wife of, Boaz, but is she actually in a relationship and in a romantic commitment to Naomi, and to honor her, gave this woman this child so Naomi would then be cared for? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's a lot right there. And there's so many layers, and we are going to have to just do a whole thing about Ruth. It's such a powerful book. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. It is interesting, and we're naming it here, that the model for heterosexual marriage ceremonies, the vows and everything is a woman saying it to another woman. I mean, and let's just be clear about that.
Yes.
And so when we talk about biblical marriage, which one are we talking about?
Exactly.
Which ones would we want? I mean, I would much rather have, although, I don't know. The way that Ruth and Naomi are together is very deeply moving. And I think that's why people are so drawn to that. I don't know that I'd be 100% in for everything that happens. Ruth having to marry Boaz and all that kind of stuff. However, it is about survival.
Yes.
They had to survive. They were, on the edge, and they were marginalized, and then they made it work. They found a way through. They were survivors. Ruth and Naomi, 100%. And it's a powerful story.
Subscribe now. It's the easiest way to support the show.
New Testament, Newer Testament. There's a different situation here.
I guess that would be my biggest question. Is there? What has changed? And that was the hardest part for me to try to figure out. It's however many years later. Has anything evolved? Has anything changed? Are women still property? Yes. Can women still be taken?
Yes.
Yes. And actually, we saw that in the book of Tekla. This woman is trying to stay, quote unquote, pure for God. And there are men out there trying to take her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much sexual violence.
And you see, even in Tekla, when she says, I don't want to marry, I'm going to break off this engagement, she is hounded by the authorities and is almost put to death.
Yeah. She's sentenced to death, basically, but she's miraculously saved by God.
Thank God.
A couple of times in miraculous ways. That was an earlier episode of our podcast, so we refer you back to that one. It was the Acts of Paul and Thecla. So the context of the New Testament, the period of time that it covers is much shorter than obviously the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible covers hundreds of years, multiple, situations, exiles being conquered, all this kind of stuff, the destruction of the temple, the sacking of Jerusalem, all kinds of things happening. You've got different empires and all this stuff. With the New Testament, you have a shorter period of time. It's, 150 years maybe, that it's being written within. Those books are being written within. And you're in the context of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, what was interesting to me is that women had more agency in Roman marriage than they did in the Jewish law as it was developed and had been developed by that point. For example, and this is going to be another episode where we talk just about divorce, women in the Roman Empire could initiate divorce of certain classes. Let's be clear. There's always a status issue here. So people who had a higher status had more ability to do things than others, which is also true still today. But Roman women were able to initiate divorce, whereas within the Jewish context, within the Israelite context, the Hebrew context, women were never allowed to initiate divorce. It was always a man giving a divorce to a woman. So that was interesting to me that there was more, so they were in a context in the New Testament where in certain circles, women had a bit more agency in what they were able to do or not do. As far as I could see, a lot of things about Jewish law and Jewish practices, many of the things were still the same. It seems that perhaps there were not as many, like when you hear some of the stories, we don't know if Joseph had more than one wife. We know Joseph married Mary. They were betrothed, and when he found out that she was with child, he wanted to divorce her, but the angel came and he decided not to do that. And we don't know if he ever had more wives or not. We have the story of Elizabeth and Zechariah. She's barren. She's not been able to have children. And as far as we can tell from the story, there is no other wife there. So it does not seem that, it's not clear how common it was to have multiple wives still at this point or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's from our stories in the New Testament, it's less clear how many wives are involved. Now, this is, I think, where many of the evangelical ideas about marriages between one man and one woman comes from, because if you look at what they call pseudo-Pauline or the Deutero-Pauline letters, where we're talking about Timothy, where they talk about what makes a good deacon or an elder in the church, and it's, married to one woman. It's a man marrying one woman, which is, I think, really referring to not having multiple wives.
I was going to say, does that mean one woman or one woman at a time?
That's also it's a good question.
Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah. The other thing that comes up quite a bit in the New Testament is, should people even be getting married at all?
Yes.
That is a big thing in the earliest times, in the earliest decades of Christianity, because there was this sense that Jesus was coming back. And so we have what they consider to be the actual letters of Paul. Paul is like, if you have to get married, but if you don't, then don't. He recommends not getting married if you don't have to.
Right.
That is the preferred state, is to not be married.
Yes. And my understanding is that there was a lot of alarm over this by the higher ups. And that why is Paul, and we've seen this firsthand through, again, the acts of Paul and Thecla, which is why Thecla was so insistent that she did not want to marry, because Paul had told her not to, that it would be better for her not to.
Yeah.
And then you have the question of, too, all of these disciples that have left their homes. Some of them had to have left wives
Yeah.
to follow Jesus.
Well, we know Peter had a wife
Yeah.
because
So-
he had a mother-in-law who got sick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are those wives? Are they just like, oh, thank God for Jesus, they're out. I don't have to. I mean, who knows?
Did they go along with them? Yeah. I mean, we don't know.
We don't know. And then it also makes me wonder about the rich man coming to Jesus saying, what do I need to do to enter the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus gives him all these things. And he's like, oh, yeah, I do all that. And then Jesus says to him, sell everything and give it to the poor and follow me. Would that include a wife? Because she's still property at this time.
Oh.
So that's a question I ask. Things I think about. So then is Jesus then also saying, don't get married if you don't have to? Jesus didn't.
That we know of.
Yeah. Most scholars say he probably didn't.
Yeah.
So was Jesus kind of, is this a case of Paul picking up on Jesus saying, well, if Jesus didn't get married, none of us should get married? Or is it the reverse? Since Paul wrote first and then the author of Matthew came back and said, yeah, we probably shouldn't get married like Paul says. Like, you know what I mean? What came first?
Right. Yeah. We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. It's not clear.
No.
And there's debates within the scholarship. Many people are saying now that those Deuteropauline letters, the later ones, Timothy and others, where they're talking about the deacons and the leaders of the church being, what makes a good leader, a good deacon, and all those kinds of things, that those came later because the culture, there was a lot of cultural concern outside of Christian movement, outside of that movement, saying, who are these weirdos that are not getting married? These are freaks of nature. I mean, and so there was this cultural accommodation that started happening in later generations and later decades of the earliest movement after Jesus died, that they're saying, hey, this is really weird. So go ahead, everybody just get married.
Yeah, because we don't know what to do with you if you're not.
Right.
We can't account for this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then of course we have this, whole thing within one very, long tradition of Christianity, which is what we now call the Roman Catholic tradition. At a certain point, these writings about marriage or, it's better not to be married, then that came to mean that the priests in the church should not be married, that they should be celibate. And, that has had all kinds of lives and consequences beyond a whole marriage family situation in the many decades and generations since then. So, these things have echoed throughout the whole Christian tradition as different generations come along and they're reading different passages and they say, okay, now we need to live by this, and then they enforce it and make everybody have to live by those things. It's a lot.
It makes you wonder, it makes me wonder, knowing that everybody has their own kind of attraction, understanding, desires, and they're all so different, that when you take one person's word for this is how it should happen without thinking that maybe that's just their desire. Is it possible that Paul didn't want and had no need for sex? So it was very easy for him to say, none of us should do it. And then we all go, oh, okay. And then, like you said, then you take that decision and put it on a whole bunch of men in the Catholic Church. And now you got an issue because some of them should be married or should do something to relieve themselves instead of preying on young children.
That is a question. Was Paul asexual? Was Paul ace? I mean, we don't know.
We don't know.
It's possible.
Yeah.
He could have been, the first biblical ace. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, so there's a lot. One thing that is nice to see, I will say, about marriage in the New Testament is that there's a lot of partying going on when there's a wedding.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wine. There's, so it seems like weddings were multiple day affairs, and they sounded like they were a lot of fun.
Yes. So at this point, we know that there is some sort of at least ceremony attached to a man taking a woman. I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, because it was still very political and I want your land and giving away of daughters to other people. I mean, we saw that all the way up into the 1800s. I mean, so it's like it's never really stopped, this
Yeah.
whole political alignment and using the woman as the connecting point.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder about those weddings. Like, was there a lot of wine just to make sure that this woman got really drunk because she wasn't happy? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, we don't know.
Or is it a celebration of two families coming together?
Yeah.
Or a land agreement? I mean, what is it about?
And I mean, the other thing I think is that, life in many ways was pretty grim, very difficult and
Yes.
hard. And so you took the chances to celebrate when you could.
Yep.
And, to have an altered mental status through lots of wine. And
3 days straight. Yeah.
I don't know. So one thing that we did not talk about is that there was this practice of having what was called a mohar, which is the payment of a marriage gift, which that was the prospective groom would pay to the father of the daughter, the father of the woman. And so that was required to pay this bride price. But then there's also a dowry where the father of the bride pays the dowry to the husband.
Right.
So it was a financial thing. It was a transaction, really.
Yeah.
And so, although it does appear that by the time of the New Testament, I was reading that the mohar, the bride price, was only often being paid in the case of divorce. So if the man ended up divorcing the wife, then I don't know. There's so much about it that doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
It doesn't make any sense. And it's very disturbing to me that there's all of this rhetoric about biblical marriage in our culture today, and yet nobody's really unpacking what does that actually mean.
Right.
There's this rhetoric in our culture about what biblical marriage means, a marriage between one man and one woman, blah, 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 blah. And, there's this whole rise of the trad wife now, and, women not working outside the home and having, there's talk in the current administration of paying women to have babies, but only $5,000, which is not much. That wouldn't even cover the cost of the birth in a hospital. There's so much rhetoric right now about, marriage and having children in traditional, quote unquote, traditional families. But it's like, what does biblical marriage actually mean? And again, it is not something that I think most people today would honestly want in
Agreed.
any way, shape, or form.
And I'm going to say women, like I wouldn't want it. I mean,
No.
I'm sure there's men out there that do,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't.
No.
I don't think women should.
No.
I don't want to go back to that.
No.
Somebody's property.
No.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And there's no consent.
Exactly.
Women wouldn't have a choice about it. And I don't think it's really what many women today would care for.
Thanks for tuning in. Up next, will the rejects keep, rethink, or reject today's topic? Stay with us.
I don't know that there's any part of biblical marriage that I would keep. Personally.
Fair. Yeah.
I am so relieved that we have in this country, up until this point, separated religious marriage from a civil marriage. I am so glad that those things are not together anymore.
Yeah.
That it's not, that we don't have religious and civil laws all mixed in together. I'm so grateful that that got separated. And I, as a woman, would not be interested in any of the biblical marriages that I see in the text that we have as the Bible. Not interested.
Yeah.
The devotion Ruth has to Naomi is sweet and moving and powerful. And I mean, it's just amazing. It's not acknowledged as a marriage.
No.
So, no, I'm not interested in any form of biblical marriage. So I reject biblical marriage as it is in the many forms that we see it take in the Bible, Hebrew Bible, and the Newer Testament.
Yeah. I also would reject all of that. The idea that a woman has no choice, it's all about property, it's all about, how I can be controlled. Like, this is how you're going to control me. I reject all of that. I also reject the idea that somehow that evangelicals will make that, well, it was God's idea for marriage. And again, and you're like, that it's the church that instituted. It's a religious thing, and it's like, it doesn't seem to be. It seems like when you really start to look at the roots of it, it's all about politics and finances and moving and shaking and alliances, and has nothing to do with love.
Yeah.
And committing to somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Which then takes me to also just rethinking marriage a little bit, and, what do I want it to be? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this book later, but there's a book called The Knot: How to Secure Healthy Modern Relationships While Not Being Tied to Marriage. And it kind of has you rethink, like, what is the importance about when, a marriage to you? And it's almost like, I know we used to do this when we were a little kid, or at least I did. When I was a little girl, I'd be like, I want a man that does this. I want a man that does that. You make your wish list and whatever. And it's always completely ridiculous, because the whole idea is that one person's going to hit all the boxes.
Right.
This book talks about the fact that that's probably not going to happen, and really understanding and walking in eyes wide open to what you want in a marriage. Do you want financial stability, or do you want your own finances and you want to be independent? Okay, great. Separate bank accounts. You know what I mean? Do you want to be monogamous, or do you want the ability to bring in a partner? Great. Talk it out. Find consent. Because a lot of the ideas that many of us believe about marriage, like I said, really doesn't have anything to do with a committed couple. And it ultimately has to do with what you said, transactions.
Yeah.
And part of that transaction is women weren't allowed to do anything, but men could make all the decisions and didn't need consent.
Right.
So now if you're talking about 2026, I think I would like, to be able to say, I think I want this.
Yeah.
And I want this. And what I am very, very blessed that in my marriage, we have evolved together. But there are lots of marriages where one person stays maybe in a traditional mindset, and somebody has decided to say, I don't agree with that anymore. And they have to renegotiate their commitment to each other. And that is something that needs to happen. And so I see more marriage now as just a negotiating of a relationship, a commitment. Did Naomi and Ruth have to renegotiate after a couple of years? Did Ruth find somebody else that she wanted? You know what I mean? Like, how do we know? You know? So I'm kind of like really sitting in that rethinking of that part. Like that's some wild stuff.
Yeah.
And I know that more and more people are beginning to do this from the jump, where the what's the thing before celebrities get married? They sign a prenup.
Oh, prenups.
Everyday people are doing prenups.
Yes.
Because they're seeing that I'm going to walk in and this is what I'm looking for in a marriage.
Yeah.
And so let's put it all out on the table. And then we can renegotiate later.
Yeah, and the prenup isn't necessarily just about finances or what
Yeah.
assets people are bringing in, but how are they defining their relationship? What kind of a marriage are they going to have?
Right.
And that is a part that I am all in for. I am so there for that. And when I talk to people when they're getting married and all that, when they're making that kind of commitment, I think it's so important, what kind of a relationship are you committing to?
Yes.
What covenant are you making to each other? And what's going to happen when one of you breaks that covenant? How are you going to deal with that? What's the process for renegotiating that
Yes.
relationship? All kinds of stuff. There's so many things. And I think, unfortunately, we're not given the tools to talk about that.
Agreed.
And especially as women, I still don't think that most women are equipped and taught and encouraged to be able to name their needs, to identify their needs in the first place, name their needs, and then ask for what they need. And same thing for men. I think being able to identify your needs, what your needs and your wants are, what the difference between those things are. This is what I would want to have, but this is what I absolutely need to have. Being able to identify it, talk about it with someone where it's safe enough to talk about those things, and then be able to decide, what is our relationship actually going to look like? What does that mean for us in the real world? And then, as you pointed out, life happens.
Yes.
People change.
Yes.
So what are you going to do when those things happen and when people start changing and evolving? Because nobody should stay the same. I don't want to be the person I was at 20.
Exactly. Which then leads us into our next topic for our next episode. Do you divorce? Do you not divorce? What happens then?
Exactly. Yes. We unpacked a lot today. I'm sure there's stuff that we missed. I know that there must be. And we are so curious. What do you think about biblical marriage? And what struck you as we were talking about things today? What did we miss? We are so curious to hear from you and to see what you think about this. And so please reach out. You can find us at religiousrejects.com or any of our social media channels. Thank you, Christine. Yay! Until next time.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.